I was saying y'all, it's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and Chase Young, Montez Sweat, and Charles Leno are not at the day one of OTAs. Ron Rivera is going to let us know tomorrow with his press conferences and all of that why they're not there. But as of right now, all we know is that those three guys are not there. And I want to talk about why this is important and not important at the same time. But I also want to dive into why Charles Leno, if anything, is probably the biggest concern and the person I want there to be day one the most out of these three. But also, we got to, of course, talk about Chase Young and Montez Sweat. But also, with those guys not there, who's getting a lot more work in their place? Who's being given the most opportunity because those guys are not there yet? Now, hopefully, by the time we get to tomorrow, before Ron Rivera even speaks, because I believe the press conference is after practice, maybe by then all three of these guys will be there before Ron Rivera gets to even talk to us about why they weren't there day one, and then none of this matters. But as of right now, this kind of does matter a little bit. So I want to talk about whether or not we should panic or we should just let it go and look past this as if this never happened. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get notification immediately and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Be on the lookout for all of the film sessions I'm working on for the entire draft class and some notable undrafted free agents like the returner out of UCLA, the receiver from Stanford, guys like that. So make sure you be on the lookout for that. Of course, channel members will get the full, unedited, uncut, like hour-long version of the film sessions. Everybody else will get the like 5 to 8 minute quick, concise versions of it. So make sure you go become a channel member if you haven't just yet. And without further ado, let's get it.
You tell your family you can be a commander.
All right, so like it's already been reported by several people, but John Com worded it as first day of voluntary OTA workouts for the Commanders. He made sure he included voluntary right there. All but 3 players attended: Chase Young, Montez Sweat, and Charles Leno Jr. per source. And then he said again, voluntary. So of course, we don't want to act like it's a big deal because it is voluntary. It's not like they're holding out. And it doesn't seem like we're going to have any holdout candidates because we've had Terry McLaurin in the past. We've had Jonathan Allen before that and things like that. And then Deron Payne went to voluntary workouts but just didn't work out in them last year. So we've had all kinds of weird holdouts. I don't think we're going to have a full-blown holdout when it comes to mandatory workouts. But so far in voluntary, we have 3 main guys missing. Our 2 starting edge rushers and our starting left tackle, which is really interesting. So of course, a lot of people are panicking the most with probably Chase Young, but honestly, I'm looking at Charles Leno the most right now, and maybe it's some really good excused absence. Maybe he only misses 1 day and he's here tomorrow and it's not that much to talk about. But as of right now, the only thing that we know is that Charles Leno is not at OTAs, and for me, that's kind of a problem just because we have a new offensive coordinator / assistant head coach in Eric Bieniemy. We have a whole new system we're turning over, an entirely new offense, new scheme, new wording, new verbiage, new logic, new everything, new play calling, new blocking schematics. And then, of course, like I've already mentioned in previous videos, offensive line, a lot of it has to deal with talent, of course, as well, but a lot of it is also chemistry and learning how to communicate and block well with the guy next to you, the guy that you're going to be hopefully blocking with the entire season. Hopefully, you know, knock on wood, no injuries or things like that. You're going to have to learn how to pass on stunts to one another and together, and to learn how to, like, without speaking to each other, know that, oh, okay, this guy's gonna handle that, so I can handle this type of thing. There's a lot of chemistry and communication that goes down with this, and this just sets us back another day. And the most interesting part is that Charles Leno is the only guy that played for the Commanders last year for his current position. I mean, you also have Samuel Cosmi, but he's technically going from right tackle / right guard to full-blown right guard as of this season coming up. So we have all kinds of changes. The starting left guard is going to be different this season. The starting center is obviously going to be different this season, and the starting right tackle is also very different. So even though Charles Leno is the only one who was here last year with the exact position that he's going in to this season with from the previous season, is still a new offensive coordinator. It's still going to be an entirely new scheme to where blocking changes, man. The offensive coordinator affects how an offensive line blocks in a big way. That's another reason why we're excited about Eric Bieniemy over Scott Turner, because Eric Bieniemy did a great job of hiding Andrew Wiley's weaknesses for Kansas City versus Scott Turner. He really didn't do our offensive line any favors as far as hiding their weaknesses and bringing out their strengths and things like that. Eric Bieniemy calls certain plays and designs certain plays in a way that it helps our offensive line be able to be more productive than they really should be. Because if we talk about talent, this isn't the most talented offensive line. And even what the Chiefs had last year wasn't the most talented offensive line. But Andrew Wiley looked like an all-pro tackle in that Super Bowl because Eric Bieniemy called a great game plan to bring that out of him. And it's just like the longer that Charles Leno waits to finally be around Eric Bieniemy so Eric Bieniemy can design his offense and his play calling and everything around him, the longer it's going to take for this chemistry to set in. And then again, even just ignoring Eric Bieniemy, which is the biggest part of this, is learning how to block next to the guy that's going to be next to him, whether it's Chris Paul, Sadiq Charles. I mean, I don't think Andrew Norwell's name is involved, but you never know. Him, maybe, even though that's somebody he has previous chemistry with from last year. Or even Nick Gates, maybe he's starting at left guard because Ricky Strongberg is good enough to start at center, and we don't trust Chris Paul or Sadiq Charles just yet. So, either way, man, Charles Leno being here as soon as possible can only help this team, and him not being here definitely does worry me a little bit. None of this at the end of the day is a big deal for real, but it's definitely something to watch out for. And so far, from what I'm hearing, the starting O-line at OTAs so far, just day one, it's OTAs. It's not mandatory mini camps. It's not training camp. It's none of that. But so far, since Charles Leno wasn't there, it was Cornelius Lucas starting at left tackle, which will not be the case once the regular season starts, of course. But what's interesting is that Sadiq Charles was starting over Chris Paul or Nick Gates as of right now. And that's because Nick Gates was starting at center over Ricky Strongberg. Then, of course, you have Samuel Cosmi and Andrew Wiley, right guard and right tackle. Those are the only two things that we're absolutely sure about. And then, of course, Charles Leno at left tackle. Those are the three spots we know we're good. Like Charles Leno left tackle, Samuel Cosmi right guard, Andrew Wiley right tackle. But even then, maybe you move Andrew Wiley to left guard if one of the other tackles behind them in the depth chart steps up big time. Because you never know. Recently signed Jared Jones-Smith may be good enough to start at right tackle. The star from the XFL, arguably the best offensive lineman out of the entire XFL this last season. Braden Daniels, the guy that I think he's still too raw, but they're hoping that he eventually develops into an elite tackle. Maybe he reaches that sooner rather than later. Maybe he gets there sooner than any of us expect, even more than the Commanders themselves, who are very high on him. You never know, man. And then you also have Trent Scott, you have Aaron Montero. We'll see. I highly doubt it, though. I think Andrew Wiley will just end up being the starting right tackle, Samuel Cosmi starting right guard, Charles Leno starting left tackle, and then we'll figure everything else out from there. But we got to see. You never know. There's a lot of time from now in the first game of the NFL season. As you've noticed, I have it in the thumbnail, a countdown of the days. If you go and look at all of my thumbnails, except for 2 videos ago, I have a countdown going of all of the day. Ever since the schedule's been released, I have a countdown of every day until we get to that week 1 matchup against the Cardinals. And I can see why you would go ahead and put Cornelius Lucas there at left tackle, because if you were playing a game, Cornelius Lucas would be the one for, if any reason Charles Leno had to miss a game, he would be the starting left tackle for this team as of today. But I just feel like you might as well just go ahead and give somebody else work there, because we already know Cornelius Lucas is a swing tackle that we don't really want to start anyway. At that point, I would have just thrown Braden Daniels out there, but the Commanders have a plan. I'm not questioning Eric Bieniemy because he's definitely earned the benefit of the doubt from me so far. So, hey, man, he has a plan. I'm going to let him do it. But then when it comes to Montez Sweat and Chase Young, this is also really weird. And of course, a lot of people are looking at Chase Young because this is a contract year, but you can't forget Montez Sweat is on a contract year as well. They're basically fighting for the same contract, and they are best friends though. So it's not like there's any bad blood between the two, but this is really interesting. So with Chase Young and Montez Sweat gone, and of course, don't overreact. It's day 1 of OTAs. This is voluntary. We have several days of OTAs. We still have mandatory mini camps, and we have a whole lot of training camp and preseason before anything even really matters. But as of today, they're not there. Again, I just want to emphasize, do not panic. But it is really interesting that they're not there. Of course, we'll eventually get an update on why they're not there. Maybe they're working out together elsewhere or something like that. I'm pretty sure it has nothing to do with health. We'll see how that goes. But with them gone, that means KJ Henry is getting more work than normal. James Smith-Williams, who started in place of Chase Young last year until Chase Young was healthy, is getting more work. That means Casey Toohill and F.A. Obada are getting more opportunities to show what they can do. And then 7th round pick Andre Jones, the final final pick of our draft class. That means he's going up higher on the depth chart as well with those guys not there. So he's getting even more work as well. We'll see if he makes the most of it. I'm not exactly sure if he will, but at least he's getting an opportunity to do so. And like I already said, to me, KJ Henry already since just the draft, he's our third best edge rusher, only behind Chase Young and Montez Sweat. I feel like he's already ready to start opposite of James Smith-Williams in this scenario. Chase Young and Montez Sweat aren't there. It's James Smith-Williams on the other side, and then KJ Henry on one side. I like Casey Toohill, and I love F.A. Obata's ability to flash every now and then, but KJ Henry to me is already good enough to start even over James Smith-Williams if it came to it. But we'll see. I definitely think by week 1, as part of the rotation, KJ Henry should get more snaps than James Smith-Williams and all of those other guys. But we'll see how that goes, man. So y'all always try to look at things glass half full, optimistically, the positive side of things, the bright side of things, because with Chase Young and Montez Sweat gone, that means that's just invaluable experience that the guys behind them, most notably KJ Henry, are getting. And then same thing with Charles Leno if it weren't Cornelius Lucas taking his place. If we would have went ahead and thrown Braden Daniels out there in place of Charles Leno, then I would have understood it a little bit more. But again, Eric Bieniemy has a plan, and I'm not questioning it because he definitely has the benefit of the doubt from me. And so, of course, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please let me know how you feel about Chase Young, Montez Sweat, and Charles Leno not being there. Is it time to panic, or is it just, it's voluntary? Leave it alone. And then if you had to rank those three in most surprised that they're not there, how would you rank them in order? Of course, I have Charles Leno the most just because he has to learn an entirely new blocking scheme, whereas Chase Young and Montez Sweat basically going to be doing what they did last year, but they're on contract year, so they better go out there and play. But also, Charles Leno is technically on a contract year, even though he isn't on the final year of his contract. After this season, you could cut him and save so much money. And if any of these younger tackles are ready, or maybe we go tackle in the first round last year, he's very likely to not be here just as much as Chase Young and Montez Sweat this upcoming 2024 season after this season. So we'll see how that goes. But either way, let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. And of course, man, shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors whose name you see scrolling on the screen right now. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.